Hello?
Oh. Okay. Well, it's 7 o'clock, so why don't we start? So, good evening. So we're here for the Town of Danvers Planning Board public meeting. We're here at the Danvers Senior Center on 25 Stone Street. It's October 22nd, 2024, at 7 p.m. My name's Louis George. I'm the chair. And so with me today is Jean Hartnett, who's our clerk, Jim Sears, Tim Spittle, and Mike DeCoulis. So, and also here with us today is Josh Morris, principal planner for the Town of Danvers. So, very good. So we'll begin today with our agenda. First agenda item is the Beaver Brooks Woods definitive subdivision from 303 to 333 Maple Street, tripartite agreement, extension of completion date, and covenant agreement related to right-of-way easement, extension of completion date. So, Attorney
Mr.
McKay.
Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself on this one.
Okay, very good. So Jim Sears will be recusing himself.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Nancy McCann. I'm here on behalf of the Beaver
Could you
Brook.
speak up just a little bit? I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Yeah.
People can always hear me.
I know, I'm sorry.
I don't know if this is on.
Yeah. Let me just check. Attorney
I think it's the fan going behind too. I think that's sort of
Let me
behind
just-
us.
Okay.
Is the mic?
Are you
How's
able
that?
to-
Is that
Are
better?
you able to hear?
It is better, yes.
Okay.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah, you could turn it up just a little bit.
All right. I'll try that again. Thank you. I'm Nancy McCann.
Sure.
I'm here on behalf of Beaver Brook Woods LLC. With me tonight is John Colantoni. And we are requesting just a 30-day extension of the completion date. We're almost there on this subdivision. And we've got the top course of paving to put in. That can't be put in until we get the foundation put in for Lot 7. That required some meeting with the Select Board with regard to the relocation of the easement. We were with you back, I think, June, July, something like that, and explained that to you. Then, unfortunately, due to the Select Board's schedule, it took 3 months to get on their calendar. It took one meeting, but it took 3 months to get there, so we got a bit behind. So we're requesting an extension of the completion date until November 30th, and we have been in communication through planning staff and directly with the engineering department. And the engineering department is concerned about weather and coldness and all of that sort of thing, so
Although it's been very nice lately. But
it's been lovely. It's been hard to have that conversation with them, but we have agreed that we would accept a November 14 date for paving to be completed,
Okay.
with all of the other items to be completed by November 30. And I think that's it.
Okay,
We can answer any questions.
very good. Okay, so turning to the board for questions. Tim?
No questions.
Okay. Jean?
No questions.
Mike?
This is just a general question, I guess. What if it does get too cold before that November 14th? Would we have to postpone till spring, or what would the solution be?
We would certainly have to have a conversation with the engineering department. Typically, in construction, the asphalt batching plants are very often running until mid-December, but we'd have to have that conversation based on some temperature readings that the engineering department did last week. They're comfortable with the November 14th date, and we're certainly going to try and get it accomplished by then, and we'll accept that as the date for the paving for purposes of this evening. But if, we get a snowstorm next week, we'll have to have a conversation.
Okay, thank you. Just curious.
Attorney McCann, just a couple of questions, just in terms of, so in taking a look at the engineering memo, I guess it's October 18th is the date of the memo. So in terms of the paving, I know that the town engineer, so you're willing to accept a November 14th in terms of completion for paving, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you'll just have to what additional what additional work needs to be completed just within the following 16 days, I guess?
There's some, I'm going to ask John to speak to this. There's some concrete
Yeah,
handicap ramps that have to be done, some general cleanup. Is there curbing left to be done, John? No curbing. That's all been completed. So it's not a lot.
okay,
It's really been, the holdup has been being able to get that foundation in because
Sure.
you don't want to have the heavy foundation trucks
sure,
traveling over your new top course of paving. So the binder course is in, of course, as you know, and it's been in for a long time.
right,
It's the top course that we're looking for now.
okay. And so this should be a sufficient amount of time, I know with from November 14th through the 30th November.
Between now and November 14th for paving, and then the rest of the items by the 30th. And it'll be tight. John's
Yeah.
going to have to work quick.
Okay.
We're more concerned about.
Would you mind going to the podium if you're gonna? Oh, sorry. We just want to make sure people can hear you at home.
John Colantoni for the record. We're
thank
more
you.
concerned about now to November 14th.
Sure.
And I'm not even concerned about the weather, though. It's a great question because we asked the same thing.
Right.
We're more concerned just, November 14th is 3 weeks. So we have a lot to accomplish in the 3-week period. We were originally asking for the paving and everything until the end of November to give us a little bit of breathing space.
Okay.
And the engineering department, and I understand why, was, push the paving until November 14th. So,
Okay.
but we'll do everything. No one wants to finish this more than I do.
Sure.
So we'll do everything that we possibly can.
And no concerns in terms of, in terms of to get this work done, are you looking at any additional, like in terms of, night work or anything of that, nature that's going to be concerning to surrounding areas and all?
No, if that was ever going to happen, we'd notify everyone to make
Sure.
sure it's okay. But we don't foresee that problem at all.
Okay, got it. All right. Thanks. I don't have any further questions for the applicant. I do have a question just for town staff. Josh, in terms of what, I noticed in our packet, we have sort of a number of things here. So we have it looks like we have an amendment and then the 6 modifications. So
Yep. So, yep, I give context. So,
Sure.
there's actually 2 documents that we're extending, modifying this evening.
Yep.
So one is the tripart agreement for the entire subdivision, which happened to expire on October 31st, 2024. And then also
What now?
October 31st, 2024.
Yep.
And then we're also, it's just the way things happen, the covenant agreement that we are part of with the development team regarding the movement of the easement was that in July also expired on October 31st, 2024. So we are simply for both documents we are just modifying, amending the dates on both. There's a couple conditions related to the pavement date being November 14th, and then they both are referencing the most recent engineering memo from October 18th.
Okay.
So there are 2 documents that we have to vote to amend because they just happen to both expire
Sure.
next week.
Is there any particular order that we're looking at? So
The order does not matter.
does not matter. So we have both the amendment as well as then the 6th modification to the tripartite agreement.
That's right.
And so in terms of what's needed from us, do we need to, so I would entertain a motion. Are we reading the amendment and the
Sure.
modification into in this
Yeah, we should do
modification
them
into the record?
we should do them separately. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. Very good. Okay. And I know this is not a public hearing. I do see members of the audience. If does anyone have any questions from the audience? Okay. And seeing that, we need to vote then on, I guess both. We can start with the amendment to the covenant agreement. So I'll ask the clerk to move to make a motion with respect to that. Yes, that's the yeah.
Okay. Amendment to covenant agreement, October 22nd, 2024. Reference is made to a certain covenant agreement dated July 16th, 2024 by and between Beaverbrook Woods LLC and the Planning Board of the Town of Danvers, hereinafter referred to as the Board, relative to the Beaverbrook Woods definitive subdivision. For consideration, the parties hereby amend conditions 3 and 4 of the original covenant agreement and add a new condition. Changes are in bold. 3, commencing upon the filing of a petition to the Danvers Select Board for the relocation of the right-of-way, ROW, that encumbers lots 5, 6, and 7 of the Beaverbrook Woods subdivision, a building permit shall not be issued for 10 Calantoni Drive, Lot 7, until such time as the developer has completed items 1 through 31 on the Danvers Engineering Division Beaverbrook Woods definitive subdivision memo dated April 18th, 2023, which items shall be completed by November 30th, 2024, except for the final pavement installation, which shall be completed by November 14th, 2024. However, a foundation permit may be issued for 10 Calantoni Drive, Lot 7, prior to installation of top course of pavement to avoid heavy construction vehicle travel following installation of top course. 4, the planning board shall issue a release of this covenant upon the issuance of a certificate of action executed by a majority of the planning board, confirming that items 1 through 31 on the Danvers Engineering Division Beaverbrook Woods definitive subdivision memo dated April 18th, 2023, have been completed to the satisfaction of the Danvers Engineering Division by November 30th, 2024, except for the final pavement installation, which shall be completed by November 14th, 2024. 10, the applicant shall adhere to all of the conditions in the Danvers Engineering Division memorandum dated October 18th, 2024. All other items and conditions remain in full force and effect. Executed as a sealed instrument, the date first written above.
Okay, there's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mike. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, so that passes. And again, Jim Sears did not recuse himself from this. So, okay. Next item we have.
6th modification to tripartite agreement.
Not yet.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Reference is made to a certain tripartite agreement dated December 8th, 2020 by and between Beaverbrook Woods LLC, hereinafter referred to as the developer, and Bank Gloucester, a banking corporation having a usual place of business at 160 Main Street, Gloucester, Massachusetts, 01930, hereinafter referred to as the bank, and the planning board of the town of Danvers, hereinafter referred to as the board. Whereas the developer has completed a significant amount of the subdivision site work, and whereas the developer requires additional time to complete the subdivision work, including remaining site work and preparation of engineering certificate and as-built drawings, and whereas all parties to this agreement desire to secure and guarantee the full and faithful construction of the ways and installation of municipal services as shown on the plan. Now, therefore, for valuable consideration, the adequacy and receipt of which are hereby acknowledged, the parties agree as follows. 1, the time for completion of the developer's obligation is extended from October 31st, 2024 to November 30th, 2024, except for paving, which shall be completed by November 14th, 2024, unless such date is further extended by a written amendment hereof entered into by agreement of the parties hereto. 2, by a vote of the planning board on April 25th, 2023, the remaining balance held under the tripartite agreement is $240,932.85 to secure the remaining incomplete work. The developer will satisfy all the comments in the Danvers Engineering Division memorandum dated October 18th, 2024. All other items and conditions of the tripartite agreement not expressly amended hereby remain in full force and effect. Executed as a sealed instrument on this 22nd day of October 2024.
Okay. Thank you, Jean. The motion has been made. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay, second by Mike. Very good. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay, and again, Jim Sears recused himself from this. So, very good. I think both have been approved. Good luck. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. All right, Jim Sears is back. Okay, so now we have our next agenda item is a public hearing with respect to 55 Liberty Street, a request for site plan review pursuant to Section 4 of the zoning bylaw, submitted by 55 Liberty Street LLC for property in the Residential 2 R2 zoning district. The applicant proposes to construct a daycare facility, Table 4, and associated site modifications, Map 52, Lot 46. And the applicant is here.
Thank you very much. My name is Nancy McCann. I am here on behalf of 55 Liberty Street LLC, owner of the property at 55 Liberty Street. With me tonight is David Sampson. He is the manager of the LLC. Also with me tonight is Bob Griffin, the project engineer. And we are requesting site plan review for a new child care facility to be located at 55 Liberty Street. The property is located in the R2 zoning district. Josh, do you have plans you can put up? Okay, there we go. This use, as you know, a child care facility is an exempt use under the Zoning Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 3, as well as Section 3 of the Danvers zoning bylaw. And the regulation of the child care facility is limited in review to bulk and height, yard, lot area, setbacks, open space, parking, and building coverage. And those regulations can be adopted as part of the zoning bylaw and have been in Danvers under Section 3.20 of the zoning bylaw and Table 4. The project, which is a child care facility, meets all of those applicable regulations as found under the zoning bylaw. The applicant he owns the property, and he's proposing the removal of an existing single-family home. It's 1940s vintage house, and he is proposing the removal of that house and the construction of a fully conforming child care facility on the property. The proposal meets all of the requirements. As I've indicated in the application, front setback of 30 feet, we're at about 211 feet. Side setback of 20, we're at 20.8. Rear setback required is 20, we are at 68 feet on the rear setback, and we meet the height requirement. We also meet the maximum building coverage and the minimum open space requirements as well. So again, this is fully compliant. The design for the child care facility is to accommodate 117 children. They range in age from infants to pre-K. We will have 23 staff members, 20 teachers, 3 floating staff members. And as required under the bylaw for that density of use, we need 35 parking spaces, and we do propose and show those 35 parking spaces. And Bob Griffin will go through the plan with you and our discussions with planning staff with regard to the parking spaces. Normal child care hours for this child care facility, and that is typically 6:30 in the morning to 6 in the evening, Monday through Friday. Bob Griffin did provide a traffic and parking analysis, again, somewhat beyond the scope of this review, but we did provide that to you, so you do have that. Engineering department has indicated satisfaction. We've gone back and forth, Bob Griffin and the town engineer, and we've responded to comments, and all of those comments have been satisfied. So I think at this point, I will turn the plan review over to Bob, and he can walk you through the plan.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Nancy, and good evening.
Just again, identify yourself for the record. Just.
Bob Griffin of Griffin Engineering
Thank you.
in Beverly, Massachusetts. I just want to go back, if we can, Josh, to C1. That'll be perfect. So, and I just really want to point out here that, we've got 80 feet of frontage. We've got a 1.1 acre parcel. There's the 55 building that would be torn down as part of this development. And those little rectangles are the 7 test pits that we did prior to preparing the plans to get some soil information for our drainage design. I'll be talking about our drainage design as we go along a little bit. The topography of the site is fairly level. The high point is out here near Liberty Street, elevation 38, and it drops down to about 24 here where this property corner is right there. So only about 14 feet of grade change across the entire parcel, and that also means that we don't have any stormwater being pushed out onto Liberty Street. As we'll be describing, we're going to handle all of our stormwater needs on our property. The next plan that we provided is really, the next sheet, please. Just really an erosion control plan, and this just shows, the entire perimeter of the site being protected with erosion controls. We've also identified some particular areas for stockpiling of soils, stockpiling of materials. Here's the proposed building that I'll talk a little bit more about as we go along here. And also a construction entrance off of Liberty Street. You've seen those, a big, heavy riprap material that the trucks drive over so that they're not tracking dirt out onto Liberty Street during the project. We'll also be putting some silt sacks and catch basins near the parking area, or near the site. On the next plan, we'll get back to our site layout again. Again, fully conforming from a setback point of view, but a couple of other things I want to point out here. The 35 spaces include 2 handicap spaces. So right up by the front entrance of the building, we've got a handicap space left and right of the center of that porte cochere there. All of the driveway aisles here are at least 20 feet wide. We have some one-way traffic coming in off of Liberty Street, then sort of looping past the entrance. And if you don't want to go underneath the porte cochere, you can just turn left here and get to these parking spaces over here. But 20 feet wide aisle for one way and 24-foot aisle wherever we have two-way traffic. Normal, size parking spaces. We did have a discussion with the planning department prior to tonight, and they suggested that these 4 parking spaces here might be unnecessary. We have them as part of our parking calculation, the 35 spaces that Nancy mentioned. But there was a discussion with the planning department about possibly not building those initially, making them grass, and then sort of see how the project goes. We have, again, 21, no, let me get it right. 23 spaces targeted for the staff. That's the 20 teachers and the 3 floaters, and then 12 for parents. And of course, all the parents aren't going to show up at the same time, so 12 might be more than you really need. So I suppose that's something that might get worked out as we go forward. But those were the 4 spaces that were referred to in that email and that discussion. We've also identified snow storage spaces all around the perimeter. So there. Some more down there. So there's plenty of room at the site to accommodate normal snow plowing and snow storage. If it ever got to the point where it couldn't be handled in those areas, it could be removed from the site. But I think given the number and the way they're spread apart, we're going to have plenty of room to keep our own snow on our property. Plus the winters are getting warmer. We've got good visibility across the entire parking area. So when you come in off of Liberty Street, you'll be able to see really the whole parking area. And so, if you're a parent, you can sort of target your favorite spot and, know really where you're going. I don't expect a whole lot of circling the parking lot trying to find a parking space here. There was a suggestion from the planning department also that we have our employees park in these spaces here first, because I think it would be a little bit more convenient for the parents to get out of their parking space here and make their way to the front door. If these spaces are built here, 4 spaces, you'd be able to walk along a little sidewalk, get to the front door. And there's a couple of spaces besides the handicap spaces as well with good access to the front door. So you'll be able to see that as you come in, and you also, the good visibility is also important for safety in the parking lot as well. Again, the grades are fairly flat in here, 3 or 4%, so kind of like Home Depot, very, very flat parking, easy to park at, no real hazards for slip and falls as long as it's reasonably well maintained. We've got a couple of small landscape walls, one up along 53 Liberty, just this little stretch here, so it's about a 4-foot maximum height wall. That's to accommodate the topography and the grading. And then same thing over here by 59 Liberty Street. There's a small 4-foot tall maximum landscape wall in that area. We've also got some fencing for privacy along here at 57, so along this line and that line, there's some fencing. And in the backyard, the play area for the kids really is encircled with fencing as well. If we could go to the next slide, please. I'm going to show our grading and drainage. As you might expect, we meet all of the stormwater management standards, and the review that we just went through with the engineering department, we provided a full stormwater management report, and we demonstrated, how we meet all of the town requirements and all the DEP requirements. But basically what we're doing is we're handling our parking lot with a, don't delete anything, with a large infiltration basin. So this is about 70 feet long and about 30 feet wide, this little rectangular area here. There's a catch basin up there, and there's a catch basin down here, both of which are treatment catch basins, so they'll treat the water before it gets into that infiltration area. We'll also take all of the roof runoff from the building and get it into that large infiltration area. And the infiltration area is large enough so that we have no increase in the rate of runoff in any of the design storms. That's the 2, 10, 25, and 100-year storms. And we also have no increase in volume of runoff. So both the rate and the volume will be less after construction than they are before. The next sheet, please, shows utilities. We're lucky here in that Liberty Street has got all of the modern amenities. So we've got an 8-inch water main in Liberty Street. We've got an 8-inch sewer line in Liberty Street. So we're going to bring in a potable line and a fire protection line to the building here. It'd be a 2-inch water for potable purposes and a 4-inch water for fire suppression purposes. We're going to have we have a topography that the site or the building is probably lower than the street by a few feet, so we're going to have to pump our sewage up to Liberty Street. So there'll be a pump chamber just outside the building, a small pressure line coming up here near Liberty Street, discharging into a manhole, and then a gravity line going across Liberty Street to the existing Danvers sewer. But all pretty routine stuff. We've got overhead power in Liberty Street. We'll drop a pole at the entrance of our property, and then we'll go underground from there to the building with our electric, telephone, and cable needs and things like that. The next slide is our landscaping slide. And our landscaping design was done by Laura Rutledge, a registered landscape architect, and she's done a number of plans for projects in Danvers before. I know her plans have been in front of your review before. But she's basically identified, she's got a planting table over on the left with some, the common types of tree species that do well in the Danvers area, but she's got some shade trees and she's got some medium-sized trees. There's about 9 shade trees picked out here and about 9 medium-sized trees. The medium-sized trees primarily are near the neighboring where we have a sort of a smaller footprint to work with, although there's one shade tree right there. And the shade trees are, the red maples and the larger trees and things like that. The medium-sized trees are the dogwoods and the cherry trees. She's got a couple of cherry trees by the site entrance, sort of framing that entrance area there. Also a number of shrubs and perennial beds all around the building, along the driveway aisles and the like. She also has a number of arborvitaes up here, 14 arborvitaes providing some screening to number 53, and perennial beds as well. The nice thing about perennial beds is that the perennials die off every fall, and so we can put snow on those beds as well. And that works out pretty well. So if we have any landscaping questions, I'll do my best to answer those later. The next slide, I think, is our lighting. And so the lumen count, as you see here, just really says that, in the parking lot area, we have about a 1 to 1.2 foot candle at the ground surface. So that's certainly adequate lighting for a parking lot. The fixtures that we've picked do a pretty good job of cutting off the light, and so we're not casting a large amount of light onto neighboring properties. But we do that primarily because this is our primary light fixture here in the parking lot. It's basically a lantern, and the nice thing about this lantern is it has 4 sides on it, so we can take a piece of opaque glass and put that in the direction of our neighbor, so we're not sending light in that particular direction. But these are also not very tall light fixtures either. So we have about 13 of the light fixtures in the parking lot area. And I think we have 8-foot tall light standards sitting on top of a 1 or 2 foot tall concrete base. So at the end, the light fixture ends up about 8 or 10 feet off the ground, which is not very high for a parking lot. We've got a couple of sconces. This is the sconce that goes up by the front entrance of the building. And we've got 4 wall packs on the building which provide some security lighting as well. So the idea with our lighting design is that the building will be on timers and motion detectors. So if somebody comes up near the building, the light's going to come on, and for security reasons. In the parking lot, we'll have timer and photo cells. And the idea with the timer is that we don't want the parking lot lit when the building is not occupied. So, with a daycare facility, we're not going to have lights on at 7, 8 o'clock at night when the building's not really being occupied. The remaining sheets are details, utility stuff. Be happy to go over any of that during the question and answer period, but I think that pretty well sums up the site plan, and I think we're ready for questions and answers.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. All right, thanks very much. Turn it over to the board for questions. Tim?
Yeah, first question might just be, was there any sort of correspondence or input from the folks at 57 Liberty Street, since they are very, very close abutter?
I guess I could.
You spoke to the neighbors a little bit?
Hi, I'm Dave Sampson.
Identify yourself just so folks can.
Hi, I'm Dave Sampson.
Great.
I spoke to the lady who owns this house here. I don't unfortunately know her name. My husband passed away this past fall, and I explained to her what we were doing, and she didn't seem to have any problem. She just asked if I cut down a tree, a little bush on my property, which I thought I left the tree there because I thought it would give her some shade, and she asked me to take it down. So I'm gonna have Johnny take it down. The people who bought the house over here, though, I don't know who bought 51 LA Street.
Okay.
The house between this site and mine is owned by bought by a young couple who don't speak English. They're very nice. We get along fine. I've been in their house. They showed me they renovated. They did a nice job, but they don't speak English. So I kind of explained. I don't think they understood what I was saying. That was.
Are they aware of you advise them about the project?
I told them we're trying to build a daycare facility, but they don't speak English. Oh yeah, and they're very nice people. But they couldn't be nicer. They're very, very pleasant. I told them they could park in my parking lot. I mean, they couldn't be nicer. They just can't talk to me. But they were cutting down some trees and they wanted to know if they could park them. I came in on a Saturday. They were in my parking lot. They were all applauding. I said, I don't care. You're more than welcome to park in the park. I've told you can park there all the time. They couldn't be nicer. But I can't honestly tell you I've had a discussion about it because I haven't.
Okay.
If I may add a comment. I believe the property owner for 57 reached out to the planning office and.
Josh, can you speak up? I can't really.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm having difficulty hearing.
The fans are
I
real
know
loud.
the fan is.
The property owner for 57 during the process did reach out to the planning office, and they had a couple questions about the trees that were being proposed and the fence that was proposed. And I asked the development team to provide me that information. I shared that with them, and I did not hear I did not have any other correspondence after the response from the development team. So.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay.
The only other two questions I had were, one's, I believe the property, the sort of back property line that abuts 128, there's a long line of trees. Is that inside your property line or outside of your property?
In fact, you can see on this plan here's the tree line right there on the property line. So it's just in some areas it's beyond the property line, in some areas that tree line is encroaching slightly onto the property.
Okay, understood.
There are 4 dead pine trees.
Can you speak in the
Yes.
microphone just so people
There are
at home
4
can hear?
dead pine trees. I'd take them down to New York second if they let me, and maybe I just should because they're on. I think they're on state property and they look like hell, but they're not on my property. And I had it surveyed and they're just not. So if they disappear, they might be a blessing.
Gotcha. All right, and the last question, you'd mentioned the particular light fixture you picked and putting opaque glass on one side. I think, is there a way, they are very, very close to the abutters, and so I'm glad there's input from them, but I could worry if some trees died, like that's going to be right in their window. Was there consideration for alternative types of lights, or maybe completely blocking out or blacking out one part of that fixture so there's no possibility of light going into the neighbor's house?
Well, I think that's really what the opaque glass does, is it prevents that bulb from casting light towards that particular house. And, if we were causing a problems, we could even have opaque glass in more than one side of that particular lantern fixture.
Opaque means some light still goes through, right?
I'm sorry?
Do I understand the word opaque correctly? Some
No
light still goes through, right?
It's black, yeah.
Oh, it's
it might as well
blacked
be.
out.
It might as well be a piece of metal.
So I don't understand the word opaque.
Okay.
Okay, that's helpful.
Right.
No other questions, thanks.
Okay.
maybe
Jim?
maybe I don't understand it.
Well, either way, if it is open, like, you should see it, get it painted black or get something that's black.
We can get a piece of metal, right? Yeah.
That's not a problem.
Yeah.
I thought the plan was excellent, very comprehensive. You covered all the normal questions that I have about landscaping and lighting and things like that. I did have two questions regarding just the queue coming in. If you could give me the measured queue, if you're coming in,
Yeah.
everyone's coming in at 6:30 in the morning, about how many cars are you going to be able to fit up before you get to the circle, if you will, or the... I got to tell you, that's the first time I've ever seen the term porte cochere in my almost 30 years on this board, and I'm interested in the what that means. Is that a French term for portico or something?
Yeah, so it's a large thing. You can drive underneath it. So you would be dry. You'd be able to open up the door like you might see at a hotel.
Right, they're usually
for example.
hotels.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I know in some daycare facilities, mom's got to bring the child into or dad's got to bring the child into the building. But I've heard of other operations where they actually have people that help the older kids get from the car into the building. So there's, they don't necessarily have to park every customer. But it depends on how the facility is operated as to whether or not that porte cochere really ends up being a helpful function or not, I suppose. But there's about, the building is about 200 feet back from the street, and that's about 9 cars if they weren't parking. So I suspect many parents will park and walk into the building, but if they chose to wait in the queue, it would be about 9 vehicles.
And your morning, I would presume, well, I can't presume that. Do you have any statistics on the activity at various hours, if you compare 6:30 to 7 to 7:30 to 8? So when are the majority of the people coming where you might have a potential issue? It's snowing out, it's raining out, parents have gotten used to dropping their kid off, and maybe the kids, they feel comfortable with queuing.
Well, and I think the staff at that point can be helpful, right? The staff can say, okay, we want you to go over here and park, and we'll bring the kid in or something like that. So I think, they'll, if we're going to have parents dropping their children off at the porte cochere, there's going to be a staff person there, and that person can also do some traffic management if necessary.
Okay. We just don't want them backed up on Liberty Street.
Absolutely not.
That's the whole. And then my other question, I know sometimes in that area, I'm not sure if it's this exact backyard or the adjacent areas, does it flood? Is it prone to flooding if you have a lot of rain and runoff from that hill?
So if you go a little further south, a couple of lots down, there is a wetland area, and this area does flow down and eventually reach that wetland area. Then that wetland drains across 128. But this area is not a wetland, so it would stay, manageable even in a heavy rainstorm.
Okay. That's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Jean?
I don't have any other questions.
Mike, questions?
I just have a few questions, maybe comments about the parking lot. I don't know if it's because I'm in the middle of my toddler drop-off stage of life, but this seems crazy to me if you have people queuing to get under the porte cochere, they're blocking 15 of the spots that people can't get into. And then they could potentially, and then the people can't even get to the other 7, the spots over on the other side, the 12 spots on the other side, because the spots behind the handicap would be blocked. So you wouldn't even be able to get to those if people were queuing in front of that. And really, you only have 10 spots for people to park for 117 kids. And I think you made a comment that people don't all come at the same time. And maybe it's just the daycares I go to, but everyone seems to be there in the same time, and it gets kind of crazy. So I don't know if there's a way to do this differently or not, but it just seems very difficult to get people in and out of this parking lot.
So let me point out something that may not be all that apparent, is that this aisle on the entrance is 20 feet wide. So that's more than 2 parking spaces wide. So if there really was a desire to queue up, cars, you would have, a 1 row of 9 vehicles here. The other row could drive past. They could reach these parking spaces over here. They could pull into these parking spaces here.
That's very narrow for 2 cars, though, 20 feet.
Well, no, but I think that if the goal was to get people off of Liberty Street and get the kids out of the car, there is certainly, by having 2 rows of 2 lines of vehicles getting into the building, you really solve that problem. And again, I think that some parents are going to want to probably park in these spaces over here and then walk their way to the front door. They might want to choose these 4 spaces here, which is sort of easy in and easy out. But I think you can easily fit 2 cars side by side in that aisle and keep things moving along.
If you have 2 cars side by side, how would you parallel park into a spot, those 4 spots?
Well, I think you'd have to wait a second for somebody to leave you a little bit of room and do a parallel parking, maneuver. But I think, if you came in and there was, a line of vehicles queued up here, you could either turn left into these parking spaces here if there was an opening, or you could drive past here and come down this aisle and reach all of these parking spaces over here.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the parking lot is very difficult for families to drop off kids. All the spots you have to walk across parking lots or drive aisles to get to the kids to the front door. And I think you said the oldest kids were pre-K 3 and 3-year-old or maybe 4-year-old. And I think that to drop off your kids when they're that young would be difficult. So I think a lot of people are going to be parking.
So there is a sidewalk, along this side here. It brings you all the way to the front door, all the way back to Liberty Street.
But what about from the other side?
And then we have a sidewalk from basically about here where the dumpster is, from here to the front door. And I think there's ample room to walk around here. You can walk
through the snow?
I'm sorry?
You'd be walking through the snow storage area? Is that what you're suggesting?
What I was going to say is I think you could walk around the vehicles. You obviously can't expect parents to walk through snow piles, and I wouldn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's plenty of room in that to park over here and to walk amongst the parked vehicles to get over to the sidewalk and then into the building.
And then if there's no spots, you'd be looping back onto Liberty Street and then back into that aisle that you suggested?
Yeah, but again, I think with the good visibility across the parking lot and a relatively small daycare facility, I think you've got plenty of opportunity to get from here. You could even, if you were over on this side, you could get to a parking space here if it had been left open, and then you could come back and make that loop again. I think the loop is actually a positive feature here in that it does allow plenty of room to get in and out of Liberty Street. I think these are 20 feet wide on each side. And there's good visibility up and down Liberty Street for, that will allow traffic to efficiently leave the site in both the northbound and southbound directions.
Okay. Yeah, I just do not agree at all with the parking layout, but we don't need to go back and forth on that.
Maybe you could extend the sidewalk to where the farthest away parking spots are?
Just to make it easier.
So you'd have a path to walk on, not through the parking lot? I mean, I have
So if
young
we
kids too,
sort
and
of
it's all I can
made
do
this
to
little L
make
here,
them
you
not
think?
run in front of traffic.
So you're thinking this little L going past the dumpster here and
Yeah.
over here? That's a possibility.
I just think right now you basically have 10 spaces for parents to park in, and 4 of those spaces are going to be blocked by cars that are in queue. So you really have 6 spaces for 117 kids to be dropped off. And I just don't think that's sufficient. And I think that there's meeting zoning, and then there's meeting practicality sometimes. And I think that that's my concern with kids' safety is just a huge thing, and I get nervous about that, to be honest with you.
Would extending the sidewalk as talked about, would that help open up additional parking spaces? Or at least a safer area to park?
So again, I think that
Gene had mentioned.
I'm not going to accept that the parking lot is in any way unsafe now, but I do think it's possible.
Not saying it's
to
unsafe, but saying
extend
would it enhance, I guess, safety?
We can take this dumpster, we can move it, a few feet back away from the curb line, and it'll still be accessible when the truck comes to pick it up. We could take this line and bring it down and make a 90-degree bend and bring it over to here. And then I think if you were in, parking in this field, it would be pretty easy to get from here over to this point, and then you'd be on the sidewalk all the way to the front door. There's
So many kids have 2 classrooms.
12, and there's 4, so there's 4 here, 5 here, 7 here, so there's 12 plus 4 is 16. Right.
If I could also just make a comment based on what Mike mentioned, especially if the idea is to potentially widen the parking lot, entering entering, right now the width is 20 feet. It looks like the exit is also 20 feet, but it's not as important, that space, right? The exiting, the width of it. So I'm wondering if you could potentially widen the entrance drive aisle by 2 to 4 feet, and then just lower, you're either giving some to each side, right? So maybe that drive aisle, the entrance could be 22 or 24, so you could potentially have 2 cars, right next to each other, queuing, because exiting doesn't matter as much if that was 18 or 16, right? You only really need like 12. So that's just something to if, the queuing seems to be an issue, that's a potential compromise or solution to definitely allowing 2 cars side by side to be queuing on that, the entrance, which is more important than exiting from a queuing standpoint onto Liberty Street.
So I think the 20 feet is sufficient for 2 cars to be side by side. 2
Right.
parking spaces would be 18 feet. And I don't necessarily want to get into a situation where I've got an issue with the fire department saying, geez, 18 feet is less than, what is in the fire code. 20 feet is what's in the fire code. So I feel comfortable with the 20 and 20. I think as a practical matter, I see your point that the exit is perhaps less important than the entrance. But I'm reluctant to reduce the exit drive below 20 for that reason.
Where's your fire truck coming in and making its turns right now? Is it the port? Is it
Say it again,
coming
please.
behind the handicap spots?
If the fire truck comes in,
Yeah.
so they would come in, they drove through here and come back out.
And you've done a truck turning analysis that the fire truck can make that U-turn there?
I think we have, I don't know that we've done a truck turning analysis, but it looks to me like, he can certainly come in, he can come straight here, then he can back up, and then he can go out.
Have you met with the fire department related to that?
I have not met with the fire department.
I would be
They've been
concerned
circulated,
about
the plans
them.
have been
If that
provided
parking
to
lot's
them.
full of cars, I'd be concerned about them coming in and making that turn out.
I think there's plenty.
I can't hear you. What did you say? Sorry.
I think there's adequate room,
Okay.
and we certainly did circulate the plans to all of the town agencies.
What was the second part? I'm sorry.
The plans have been circulated to all of the town departments.
Including the fire department?
Yeah, we did not receive a comment from them, but they were provided the plans,
Okay.
but they did not send a comment.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, because I know typically when the fire departments responded, they've usually said we have no, if there's a comment, they say there's no comment.
Correct. There was no response, no correspondence.
Okay. But they did receive.
Yes.
Okay.
If I may, because I do like your point, Mike. I also have toddler-age child who I drop off. I think the parents at my school might not be as punctual as yours because we're generally not all there at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so this does strike me as enough spots from my just ballparking my experience, but that's anecdotal. The thing that I actually, if we're looking for more space or looking for a wiggle room for how to change this, the porte cochere, if it's only going up to pre-K 3, I don't think any of those kids would get out of the car by themselves. That does strike me as a nice feature. If it's weather and you have maybe mom and dad are going together, dad can park, mom gets out, takes the kid in. That's very rare for our family. Usually one parent's just doing it.
Yeah.
So if we need more room, that seems like that's a nice to have feature, right? That is not a must have feature, and that may be space where you could get more spots or make more room.
No.
So just throwing that out there as an option.
So again, I think we're required to have 35 spaces. We have the 35 spaces. I think we've got good maneuverability here. I think the aisles are generous. It seems to meet all the requirements.
The 20-foot aisle's generous, you're saying, for the 2 cars on the entrance?
I think for one-way traffic, 20 feet is sufficient. Yes.
It's two-way traffic if you're queuing up, correct?
Where we have two-way traffic. So, for example, here we have
Sorry, on the
24-foot
entrance.
aisles.
I'm sorry, the entrance where you talked about queuing cars next to the parallel spots, it's 20 feet.
As a possibility that would accommodate your request of, well, what would you do if you had cars queued up in excess of the ability to get in off of Liberty Street? And so I explained that you could put 2 cars side by side.
Okay. Mike, anything?
I'm very concerned about this, especially with the fire department and
Sure.
just safety, but I mean, I don't know if there's any grounds to stand on with that, or if it's just
Right. Okay.
is what it is, but.
Well, I have a few questions, and we can certainly come back with any other follow-up questions from the board as well. Just in terms of, so kind of just picking up again, going back to the queuing question in terms of the, and so I know you indicated that for the 20, that you're looking at that 20 feet on both for entrance, 20 feet for exit is what is there any, in terms of within the plans, is there any, assuming that the exit stays at 20, is there any additional wiggle room to widen the entrance?
Well,
Is it the? Yeah, I think we're talking about I think it was the entrance that was
you know,
the.
well, what I was going to say is that, we have a little bit of
can you
unused
push it
space
down?
here. We could potentially pull this line to the south a little bit, and then in so doing, at the same time, probably pull these parking spaces in that direction, and that might widen up some space right here. We have a 3 to 4 foot wide landscaping bed there. I could potentially whittle down the landscaping a little bit, but, or we could eliminate the sidewalk. I'm not sure that any of those are really great options.
Sidewalk.
What's that, Jim?
We need the sidewalk.
Yeah, I think we need, we need the sidewalk. I was just wondering if there's any sort of, while keeping the sidewalk, I wasn't sure in terms of with respect to setbacks and such, whether you had a little bit of flexibility or even in terms of pushing down the spaces a little bit.
Well, if we put a fence here instead of the arborvitaes, I suppose you could potentially, that 3 or 4 foot planting bed could be reduced. We could push the sidewalk closer to the property line. That would pick up 2 or 3 feet there. And again, I think there's a little bit of room in this triangular area here.
Yep. Okay. So you'd be able to, so in terms of you'd be able to eke out, you said maybe about 2 or 3 feet?
I think so.
I'd rather see that down on the bottom of the plan than the top of the plan, because you have a neighbor right there that you want to keep the arborvitaes to shade, you have a neighbor on each side, actually.
Sure. Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Jean, did you have something you want?
Yeah, so if you made the pull-in to the parking spaces be on as you're exiting instead of as you're entering, do you think that would help with queuing at all? Because, you have to go around anyway to get to the exit, and then people wouldn't be stopping as they're coming in. They would be entering the parking spots towards the back end of the drive-through.
So
As they leave.
Yeah.
the thought that occurs to me, though, is when I look at the length required for 4 parking spaces here, it's longer than the available space here. So I might not be able to get all 4 spaces flipped from this side to this side.
No, I'm just talking about the ones in the middle.
In spaces.
Yeah. So instead of pulling in,
I misunderstood you then. I'm sorry.
so when you drive in, you
Yeah.
pull to the left to park.
These spaces here?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
instead of doing that, loop all the way around past the handicap spaces, and then pull into the left
Yeah. So
from the bottom.
the planning department suggested that we encourage the employees to park in these spaces,
Okay.
allowing the parents to have more of a priority for these spaces over here. I think they thought that would be easier to get to the door in that particular manner. And I still think that it's a reasonable suggestion. But I'd really, if you would rather leave these open for the parents, I suppose we could do that instead of the staff.
Just kind of where that comment was coming from, the context is, parents are, they're more transient. They're like, they're just there for a very
Sure.
short period of time. So if you have everyone coming in and you have parents backing up out of these spots, there's going to be 20, 30 cars and they're not going to be able to back up. They're stuck. They're going to get mad. Like everyone's going to be stuck and no one can even move. So that was, I don't know, and we're trying to make the best situation possible. The other spots on the site, you're less walking behind, with a child. There's a smaller distance where you're kind of holding their hand and like walking through the parking lot. Then those spots have like no sidewalk, you're like walking behind all the cars in the parking lot pretty much. So that's what why when I looking at this, I thought that might be a better place for employees. They just stay in those spots. They're not leaving. They're just there all day. They're not like backing up when everyone's queuing.
I see. Mhm.
So that was the reasoning why I thought that might be a better location for, not like, I don't know if the signage is needed like employees only, but it probably is, because they won't be leaving and no one's backing up. It's a better place than the other places that are much easier to like back up, because they're just going to be there for 5 minutes or less, you know.
Okay.
I mean, Bob, just that comment, I know that you had mentioned that the exit you'd prefer to be 20. You know, is there any kind of wiggle room a little bit on that exit to be, I mean, 16, 18? I mean, I think we could kind of steal a couple feet from the exit. I don't know. I think I mean, even that at 16 is pretty wide. I don't see.
That's
The other side is much more important to have space. And I thought that when we were talking, you know, before the meeting and everything, that we were even trying to get rid of those. I mean, those four parallel spaces, from a functionality standpoint, they're not even able to get out
Right.
anyway.
They would have to be
So
employee.
Yeah.
They would have to be employee along with the other 11, right?
I mean, my recommendation was just
But
to
then
get.
you'd only have 6 spots available for people. If you
What
took out
about
those 4
on the other side? There's the 12 and the 4.
Well, there's 33 total, because you don't count the 2 handicap for general population. So if you took away 4, you're at 29, and then 23 of those are for employees. So you're at 6 spaces for 117 kids.
No, wouldn't it be 12 plus 4? Isn't that 16?
But some of those are needed for employee, because there's only
Oh.
11 on the other side.
I see, because
You're only
they
having-
all
you're only having
can't.
6 unoccupied spaces available at all times.
Sure. So, from everyone's experience,
Sure.
including mine, whatever reality, do we, at that number of kids, do we feel like 6 is not sufficient? I guess the issue is, if you keep the 4
Shakes, right?
parallel spaces,
Gets you to 10 spaces. I get concerned people are going to back up onto the street.
I just feel like,
Yeah.
from a reality standpoint, no one, because that's going to be all queued up, obviously, you're not even going to be able to get out of those spaces.
Right.
Well, if they're employee, then they're already there before
Right.
everybody.
They're
Right.
designated for employees. They got there at 6 a.m.
And I
already.
also think we're overestimating the amount of people are going to pull up to queue when they have 3-year-olds in their car.
Say that again, Mike, I'm
I
sorry.
think we're overestimating the amount of people who are going to be queuing to drop a 3-year-old off out of their car.
You think it's older children, you're saying?
Yeah, but I don't think people are pulling up and dropping off a 3-year-old.
Right, you're saying the number, right. So I guess really the issue is how many parents with their children are parking
Right.
and then doing the the hand holding and walking in. Do we think that only 6 people will be doing that? I don't know.
I think that's why I think, and I know there was a discussion made about eliminating 4 of the spaces, but it may make sense to retain them, and then at the same time, maybe even add some additional, I know we were talking before, even maybe adding some of the, the sidewalk on one of the side, just to make it, a little more ease and people being able to get into the building from a parking space.
Yeah. Anything we could do to, it seems like that entrance portion seems to be, concern. You have any thoughts, Bob?
This is for employees.
So I think we can, we can get the 20-foot aisle here to 22 feet without necessarily losing the arborvitaes, and probably taking this line here and moving it to the south a little bit. So I think we can accommodate that request there. As far as additional parking spaces go, I think we've met the requirement, but I could possibly see, an additional parking space over here, and maybe this line of 4 spaces becomes 5 or something like that. But I really want to lay it out to know.
Yeah, in terms of additional parking space, I think we were talking about, I was mentioning going back to the original 35 versus
Right,
the
like not
30
remove-
versus the, we were talking before about a
we'll keep these
reduction of
4
4.
anyways.
What's that?
Okay, so we'll keep those 4 and stay at 35 spaces.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, employee, and having those spaces designated as employee spaces.
That's fine.
I know we've talked about like meeting the 35, but I just get concerned there's going to be people who, when there's only 6 or 10 spots, that
Yep.
people are on Liberty Street trying to find a spot, and it's going to cause issues. And then I have a major concern about the fire truck, even though we said we emailed it to them. I think that we should look at like a truck turning analysis or something to see if they can even fit into this lot. I mean, it's a place with 117 kids. I don't think we want to have a fire truck not being able to get in there if there's an emergency.
Okay. Just picking up on that, has there been any, in terms of, I have a few additional comments myself, but I guess just to the applicant, picking up on Mike's question in terms of a truck turning analysis, is that something, in considering we haven't heard anything from, at least substantive from a fire department, is that something that you've done or you'd be willing to do?
If you were to speak, I think you need to speak in the mic, sir. I'm sorry.
I would think that would be the purpose for giving the fire department plans, is to have them comment if they felt it appropriate, and have no reason to believe they didn't review them. They asked for them, or they deserved them, they got them, and I'm not trying to be condescending about them, but I just assume they looked at them. As far as doing a little, if it's a walkway to add to the, that makes all the sense in the world, and
Sure.
that makes all the sense. And I wish it was bigger site, don't get me wrong. Believe me, I should have bought the house next to me, to be honest with you. Should have, but I didn't. So there's no doubt it would be a heck of a lot easier for everybody if there was more parking. I can't argue that. And that's why it's not more capacity. I mean, it's in the, again, I don't know what I'm talking about, but this is a portico here. I don't know where you're getting more space in there. It's just convenience.
Sure.
To make it a little bit more comfortable for the parents who wanted to drop them off if it was raining, that type of. It's not, I don't think we're going to pick up any spaces if we got rid of it. As a matter of fact, in talking to several of the major national developers, for whom they don't seem to have much interest because it's too small, they didn't want a protocol.
They did not.
They didn't think it was that.
Was there any question, I mean, in terms of the, sort of the operation of that, so that's strictly going to be for drop-off versus you pull up a little bit forward, park for 5 minutes and go in?
Well, I don't mean to, I can't tell you what people do, but
Sure.
I drop my grandchildren off all the time, and I'm in out of that car no more than 50 to 60 seconds, but that's just because I
How
bring
old,
them.
just out of curiosity?
Pardon me?
How old, just out of curiosity?
I'm sorry.
How
How
old
old
are
are
your
your
gra-
grandkids, just out of curiosity?
Father, right now they are 5 and 7, but when they were little, I would just bring them in, and I just bring them right in. The teachers would take them as I walk in the front door, and so I was not out of my car for more than a minute. But some people may dilly-dally too. But that's not designed to be parked. They're designed to see people just moving through it.
What's the height of the porte cochere?
Pardon me?
What's the height of it?
The height of the port cruiser.
I don't think the architectural of the building has been defined, but it could be, 13, 14 feet probably.
Okay.
So it would fit the largest fire truck in Danvers?
It can certainly be built to travel underneath by a large vehicle, and in fact, I think at most hotels, they're able of doing that.
It's hard to hear with all the
8 feet 10
noises.
inches.
Fans.
Okay.
Yep.
The,
Okay.
Do you have the
All right.
the
Oh.
scale of the building, the scale of the height? The picture?
The building height we gave you,
It's
20 feet to the
it's
midpoint.
it's 20 it's
20 feet
Yeah,
to the midpoint.
The height of the
The porte cochere, yeah.
sure.
it's just the building. I don't know the port cochere
For
specifically.
the elevations.
PC.
That's a better way to say it.
I think what we have to remember is that this is a facility where there will be an agreement, there will be a contract, you drop your kids off a certain way, you park in a certain place. This is not a free-for-all. And there will certainly be, in the information given to parents, you can't block Liberty Street. You can't queue out onto Liberty Street. We've set this up now where we can give 22 feet on that entrance rather than what was proposed as 20. And again, Bob has indicated 20 feet in width, as he had proposed, is sufficient for 2 cars to be next to each other. But if that's a little uncomfortable, we can move the parking spaces, decrease the exit from 20 down to 18.
Okay.
That's the exit. The entrance goes from 20 to 22. That is certainly enough room for folks to drive in on the right-hand side and go under the porte cochere and drop off. That's not going to be a place to park. The instructors are going to be there helping the kids out. It's a 20-second stop, if at all. And you line up if you want to do that, and then you circle and you go back out. If that line is longer, or if you don't want to do that, you'll be able to queue on the left-hand side and take your left and go into those, we've got parking spaces over there for that purpose. I agree, and we had this discussion with Josh when we went through the plans. We are showing the required number of parking spaces. We didn't really want to reduce, and in fact, I did not ask for a reduction in the parking. Josh indicated that he would provide that as a staff comment to you, that maybe we get rid of those 4 parallel parking spaces. I didn't request the reduction because I thought we might have this conversation. So I think we leave those 4 parking spaces, and we have 2 lanes, if you will, entering there. One that can queue right around. I think it makes all the sense in the world. The other one goes through the porte cochere for the drop-off, and it works fine. And the fire department has been provided with the plans. They had an opportunity to respond. When we submitted these plans on August 13th, that's plenty of time for comments in that regard. And also, engineering department has been known to comment about that sort of thing too, and they did not. And as Bob indicated, there is the ability to maneuver. There is no problem getting a fire truck into this property. The question is whether, in circulating around, do they have to do a backup, as Bob indicated, and then come out? And they might to exit.
Right.
But there's no problem getting the fire truck in, and there's no problem with backing up. And they do it all the time with TNs and things like that for fire trucks for maneuverability. So having access is certainly there for emergency vehicles, and the fire department had plenty of time to respond and comment on that.
Well, Attorney McCann, I just ask you just a couple of, just a question then, so in terms of the, just in terms of the parking, so I know you mentioned about sort of enlarging the entrance to 22 feet, decreasing the exit from 20 to 18. Not reducing the parking, so staying what was originally proposed. Would you be willing to include designate those 4 parallel spaces as employee spaces?
Sure.
Okay. And
That makes sense.
And I know that in terms of the fire, in terms of any concerns with respect to fire truck access, considering now this would be a change, albeit slight, would you be willing to include as a condition that that the fire department be consulted, and that they are, in essence, are okay with it? Either through their affirmative saying we agree with it, or at least saying we have no comment to add. I'm just a little bit, especially if we're making changes with particularly the exit, is that, just because, even assuming that it was reviewed and they gave it the green light, then there's still a change. And so I think that, just like similarly as having a condition, like having, complying with engineering conditions, making sure that the fire department is okay with respect to fire truck access, specifically just with respect to fire truck access.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think you have to ask her permission. I mean, I think there's an omission in that we do not have a response from the
Right.
fire department, so we need to clarify.
Okay.
Is there a response, they reviewed it, or they didn't review it? So I don't think you have to ask the applicant for permission to do
Yep.
something.
Okay.
So if that's something that the board's concerned about, then we can put that in the decision.
Very good. Okay. That's something I'm
Yeah.
That, and so as a condition, I think, Mr. Chairman, were you asking if we would accept a condition that the fire department will confirm with staff, or staff will confirm with the fire department that the circulation is acceptable? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. We can live with that condition, absolutely. Because I think it's, as you all know, that while they did have ample time to review this, they also review in great detail at building permit time, plans as
Right.
well. So
But I
they'll
think it
have
makes sense. There's a concern
another-
at the front end of this, at the early end
Sure.
of this. I think it's better to take care of it at the
that's
early end.
Fine.
Okay.
Can we have a condition that the employee parking be designated on the entrance aisle to the left and the right? So we'll have signage and instruction for employees, so that we're comfortable, because there isn't any signage shown on the plan. We've talked about it, but I think unless you
I agree.
show it on the plan, it's required.
Yeah, we can add signage along those, I think best perhaps for the condition, because we're in agreement, that's absolutely fine, that those parking spaces along the left and the right as you come in will be designated as employee parking.
We're going to add one more on the right? Is that true? So we might have 5?
I don't think we really want to do that, do we? I don't think we need to do that.
Well, there's
Where were we going to add
mentioned
it?
as a possibility of going maybe a little further
A little
up.
further up, yeah. Griffin mentioned it.
Yeah, Mr. Griffin mentioned that maybe going a little bit further up.
Alrighty.
And there might have been a misunderstanding on my part. I thought there was a request for an additional parking space, and I said, well, this would be a possible place to add a parking space. And it might even be in this little corner where the dot is right there. But that's a potential problem. That's why I wanted the opportunity to sort of sketch it out.
If the walkway is considered,
If you could please
You
speak
have
in
to
the
speak to the
microphone, sir.
microphone, sorry.
if a walkway is considered important, and it certainly should be for safety purposes.
Yes.
It's far more relevant, I think, to have the walkway unimpeded with one extra parking space that may be possibly perhaps used by an employee. It makes a lot of sense. I think also, and I happen to agree with it, put a walkway around, as we talked about, a walkway down here. So that
Yep.
concern for these people can be accommodated. That makes all the sense in the world. And if the fire department has a problem, we'll have to deal with them, because I don't care what the regulations are. If it's not going to be safe, that makes no sense whatsoever. So we'll make sure that we make an agreement. The fire department is given all the right, and actually maybe directly requested to send comment rather than just given the opportunity to. Because the last thing you want is kids to have a fire and have a problem. That makes no sense.
Okay. Okay, so in terms of are we at an additional, so are we looking at an additional parking space, or is that, no?
But the fire department.
Hello, sir.
Fire department review is fine. And no additional parking space, because that could interfere with the walkway, which we deem as important.
And what about the walkway sort of on the side of the property facing
Yes.
59? So
That's
you're-
an L. I have it in my notes as an L
L, okay,
extension of the walkway on the left-hand side.
okay. Okay, turning it back then to the board, this is a public hearing, so we'll take public comment in a moment. I know that, Mike, you expressed concerns with respect to circulation and such. I just want to come back to the board if they have any other questions, since we've talked about a lot of things here.
Yeah, I guess nothing really that specific. A lot of these angles of the cars and the turns and kind of how it was designed concern me. I think that it would make sense to have a parking consultant look at this, but that's just my personal opinion.
Okay. Jean, anything?
No, nothing further.
Jim? No. Yeah. Tim?
last comment, because Jim said it right after I asked my questions, which was just great project because we definitely need more childcare around here. So I was very excited to see this. Thank you.
Okay. All right. This is a public hearing. If there's anybody from members of the public who has a question, Mr. Bradstreet, approach the podium and identify yourself. And
Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. If this board, in fact, accepts what's been discussed tonight, and if this project is completed, and it is then found that what's might be accepted tonight is not going to work, who's responsible, or how is the situation corrected? Do you, as a board, have some control over that, or who deals with correcting a bad situation that it isn't visible until it's done? Down the street to put a school up, and it wasn't until after the school was put up, they found out that they didn't have enough parking spaces. That's after the fact. What happens here after the fact, and who has regulation over that and dealing with it and making sure it's made the way it should be?
okay.
If I can ask the question.
Well, I think part of the thing is we want to, I think that's why even doing such things as like getting, making sure the fire department is okay with things, is making sure that we take care of things at the front end of things. Josh, with respect to any sort of questions in terms of, I know obviously we've had engineering review this, there are engineering comments. What, in terms of this hypothetical question about if there's something that's found after the fact?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that we sort of did something with Costco a little bit a couple of weeks ago, and that.
You speak up a bit? Okay.
Yep, we did something similar with a project recently. I mean, this concern about queuing. I mean, I think if we're talking through conditions, we should definitely have one related to queuing. Is queuing onto Liberty Street is prohibited. That's what I was trying to jot down here because I thought you were gonna ask this question. And I think that we have to craft a decision, have to craft a condition in which, if the situation arises, what are we going to do? So I think we should talk about that for a minute, like with the, the operations, in the event that there's, consistent queuing onto Liberty Street, the applicant developer, has to work with town staff to come up with a plan. We don't want Dunkin' Donuts right on High Street, right? We're trying to avoid that situation, right? So I'm open to comments or suggestions, but I'm just trying to write it right now as you were speaking. So I would say something like, in the event that, there is consistent queuing on Liberty Street, like the applicant and developer must or shall work with town staff, for a resolution to this item, right? Or we have to figure out something to not allow it to happen, right?
Okay.
They have to come back to so that's my proposal for the moment, but open to conversation.
Jim, did you have a?
Open for
Yeah,
discussion.
well, I think to answer your question, obviously the zoning enforcement officer,
Yeah.
the building inspector would be overseeing the building, the building permits. If it turns out that in the operation of the building and the use, you have a major traffic issue on Liberty Street, the select board is in charge of traffic. But I think to prevent that problem in the operation, just like with Costco and other applicants, we know your hours of operation are 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. We know you've got 23 staff. I think if you build in with your business plan, operation plan, of that 23 staff, we're going to have, 3 people assigned to this role from 6:30 a.m. to 9 a.m., which is the normal drop-off influx. We're going to assign 2 or 3 people to traffic, if you will, or this particular role. Like, well, for a lot of years, St. John's Prep, never had anyone out there, and now they added another 300 students, and they have people that are specifically out there to direct traffic every morning as students are dropped off, especially the younger students on Benjamin Hall. But you're going to have to dedicate, and maybe we'll see that in your operation plan, and/or accept a condition that, you know, there will be maybe one person. I don't know how operationally, and you folks with younger board members with younger people know that, you know, if one person's grabbing the students and taking them back, the two other people, you know, revolving and taking their place. And if we need to have someone at the entrance closer to Liberty Street in the first month of the year, as people are getting used to the operation, or like a lot of these schools when they first start, you know, they're out there educating the parents on how to do the operation. So maybe something in the a condition that there is an agreed upon operations in the operation manual, the operation of the facility, that we're dedicating a certain number of personnel to handle that heavy load of drop off. Because as we know, most people, nobody's commuting. You know, you have one mother dropping off one kid. I mean, she might have 2 kids or 3 kids in the car. Maybe she's dropping off 2 out of 3, or maybe she's dropping off the youngest first, and she's got 2 older kids she's leaving in the car. So it can get complex. So I think that's the biggest concern is for everyone on the board is we don't want to have a traffic nightmare where people are queuing up on Liberty, which can be a busy street, and you're not that far from the light. You know, I mean, how many? I don't know if Mr. Griffin, if you know how far the entrance would be to that light on Liberty Street, where people are going to be taking a left onto 62 or right onto 62 and getting on 128. We know what that intersection is like further closer to 128 in the mornings. So there's a fair amount of traffic there. So that might be helpful to know that, because we want to prevent extra queuing on Liberty in both directions.
Yeah.
I have that number.
If you can address.
Sure. So the distance from our driveway to the crosswalk at Elliott Street is 175 feet.
Okay.
So,
How many cars would that be? How many cars?
That's about 9 lengths. or
let's
9
see.
or
So
5.
I had 7 cars. It was 125 feet. So 175 feet would be about 10, maybe 9. Well, actually, yeah, yeah. So, in that range.
Okay. Attorney McCann, what do you think in terms of the
I
mean, I think that's a fair idea in terms of having an operational plan.
I
with town
think
staff.
certainly a condition that there will be no queuing out onto Liberty Street. And as far as enforcement, as Attorney Sears pointed out, there are a number of layers of enforcement, and we would take that as a condition. So if we violate that condition, that
Right.
brings us back to you if there is a violation. Code enforcement officer, planning director can enforce that as well. There's also a general condition in the zoning bylaw that we can't create a nuisance. So that's something as well that can be relied upon. However, when we were talking about the staff, we have 20 staff and 3 floating staff.
Okay.
So we could take a condition that the 3 floating staff members will be monitoring drop-off. And will make sure that there's no queuing out onto Liberty Street, that the kids are being dropped off properly. That, with any well-run childcare facility or a school generally, is going to happen. So, sure, we'll take that as a condition that I'm saying 3 because that seems to make sense. We've got the staff in the different age group rooms, and then we have 3 that are already designated as floaters. Well, they can be floating in their position for monitoring drop-off. I think that would happen anyway, but we would take that as a condition.
Okay. Jim, what do you think of that? Is that
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
okay? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Bradstreet, did you have anything?
Again, after the fact is not, to me, it's not going to work. This gentleman's going to spend a lot of money if there's a problem that's created, it's going to end up in front of the select board. If it does, and they decide one way or the other, it would ultimately cost this gentleman money. I would rather see this not wait to after the fact. I'm not an engineer. I don't fully understand what they're talking about. But having said it, I'm not happy with it. So again, rather than waiting to after the fact and discovering that this doesn't work the way, it's not an ideal world, this doesn't work the way it's being presented, it's going to cost him money, and nobody's going to be happy. And certainly, I don't think the select board likes to be the ones that have to do this, again, after the fact. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have a particular applicant in mind a particular tenant in mind or company? I mean, I know there's I believe it's KinderCare on North
Yeah.
Street that I go by in the mornings, and I mean, is there some empirical data that you could get from a facility of this size that says, you know, these are the times that we have the most traffic, or we anticipate on an average basis in the Northeast, or whatever, some type of data that would say from 6:30 we normally get, 20 kids. 7 o'clock we get another 20 kids. 7:30, you know what I mean? There has to be something that could probably help us figure this out.
Well, we don't have a specific tenant in mind, operator in mind. As Mr. Sampson indicated, national companies would love to be here because of the location, but it's too small. The facility is too small. So we're going to be looking at regional or local providers, operators. But we don't have one in mind yet because we wanted to get our permits in place first for those smaller types of facilities that works better rather than trying to give some theoretical plan. But Bob Griffin has been at this a long time as far as laying out site plans and parking, and we have mechanisms to deal with it as we've just discussed in conditions. We're providing the adequate number of parking spaces according to the zoning bylaw. We're meeting all of the requirements. We've got a good amount of space. We've got sidewalks. We can come back to you after operations begin for a review. 4 months after operating, 6 months is often the time frame, just to make any tweaks if need be. But this has been laid out again by a competent engineer who is quite secure in how this has been designed and laid out. So we would take a condition of coming back in 4 or 6 months after operating. And of course, we can always be required to come back earlier if there's an issue, but we do not believe there's going to be an issue with how this is designed and meeting all of the requirements.
Okay. With respect to coming back sort of at the, either 4 or 6 months, what do you all think in terms of the that as a condition? Fellow board members. No. Yes, go ahead.
In all fairness, if there's concerns that you think are going to be addressable once it opens, unless we're missing something, everybody in this room is missing something. I don't see a whole lot of space to show a lot of flexibility once we're up and running. I wish I could. I mean, I'd love to tell you there's a hidden 25,000 square feet somewhere, but I mean, rather than to be potentially misleading, if it opens and it's built and it's leased and someone's operating out of there, this gentleman's got a point. I mean, you don't have a whole lot of options on this particular site. Shifting topics only slightly to Ms. question on the professional operator's perspective. I've talked to several of the national developers who are blatantly cavalier, in my opinion, relative to parking. They say that most jurisdictions, and particularly in eastern Massachusetts, are overly requiring parking, and then they don't really need it. I think I'd be sensitive to the parking, to be honest with you. I mean, I've never been to a place where I had too much parking, to be honest with you. So that's the only feedback I can give you is what I've talked with these, say, half a dozen, it's 5 or 6 nationals. They say the parking requirements in eastern Mass, because they go all over the country, are excessive. But, you know, as I said, I'd rather have more parking than less, and I don't think that their cavalierness towards it is anything more than maybe just to try and make the process easier. But again, if this had flexibility, we would try to put on, we had a nice garden here that was trying to be, I thought was beautiful, and we had to give it up, we'd give it up. It is what it is, unfortunately.
Okay.
That's about it. I understand, they appreciate his concern. If I said, we got a lot of dry powder, and down the road, if it doesn't work, here's what we can do. But I don't think we have a lot of dry powder, and I don't think there's a lot we can do if it doesn't work. I do think it'll work. We have 2 others that we own, and they have a lot less parking. But that's not really relevant, I guess. But they do work. I mean, the people just buzz in, they drop off their kids, and
Well, I think if it doesn't work, I think it was picked up before. I mean, it may mean you have to ultimately change your operation plan in terms of even stagger drop-offs or something of that nature.
apparently, according to these national groups that I talked to, they seem to think that the drop-off is not as concentrated as you and I both might have witnessed, by the way. When I drop my grandkids off, it seems like it's at a busy time, but they seem to think that it's more staggered than concentrated, but again, easy to say that. And,
Okay.
you know.
All right. Well, coming back then, back to the board. So, in terms of what is the will of the board? Tim?
I generally don't think setting an arbitrary deadline for when they should come back makes a lot of sense. I think we've already outlined what the enforcement mechanisms are. I mean, it sounds like there's a gap here where one space for each 10 children, that's a small number, if you're assuming they're all coming. So we're really just speculating. I agree there's a risk. We've sort of pushed around the edges as much as we could. And so again, if it doesn't work, like operations is the only thing that's going to fix the use of this space, and that's not really within our control. So police it if it isn't working. Otherwise, it looks like they've done the best and they've met the requirement.
Okay. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, and not to belabor the point, but my friend of mine runs the Goddard School in Middleton, which is right on 62, and it appears to be a similar size building. I'd be interested to see what his traffic is and what time they come. So just to have that as a example and something to compare with, and the facility on North Street, you know, has a very small drop-off area and parking lot. It doesn't seem, they're not spilling out onto North Street. They're not, overloading the parking lot. But I'm not sure how many people they have there. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to, to say, oh, well, this is way too many for this space, or, this is our experience over the first 3 hours of the morning. We spread out the 117 kids every few minutes. So it's a perfect world, right? As opposed to, no, everyone has to be there. Everyone, I guess if you had a problem, you could almost restrict people and tell them when they can come.
Yeah.
You have to drop your kid off at 7. You can't come at 6:30. We can only accommodate 20 people at 6:30. And there's got to be a way to get that out.
As I said before, these are going to be contracts. This is not a drive-by situation or an impulse stop. The school, the daycare facility, is going to know and be able to regulate when kids can be dropped off, and they're going to have staff there to monitor that operation. There's not.
So would it be a
much
question in their questionnaire to the customer, if you will? What time are you picking up and dropping off?
Sure, there
That
could
way they
be.
can kind of gauge the
Yeah,
issue every year.
yeah, there could be that, yeah. Right, they can absolutely do that.
Okay.
It's like making an appointment. This is not a unique situation to this particular business. We talk about it when we talk about automotive service. When are all of the cars being dropped off? Well, we do it by appointment. This is no different than that.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Jean?
Just curious, do you know, like, in comparison to the other facilities in Danvers, this has 10 classrooms for 117 kids. It seems like it's on the larger side. Do you know if there are any that are bigger in Danvers? Or that size?
I don't know that.
Okay.
No.
I was just curious.
Mm-hmm.
Mike?
I think we just keep making comments about like appointments and stuff, and I just want to say as a parent, I totally disagree with that. Some days dad picks up, some days mom picks up. I'm coming from Boston, my wife's not. I think that your kids get out the door easily some days, and other days they fight and kick and scream, and it's just very, very different. So I understand where we're coming from, and I know it's an operational thing that you have to deal with, so that's not something that we need to get involved in, so that's fine. But I do think the one thing that we should focus on as a board is the fire truck stuff for safety, which you are totally on board with, so that's great. But I understand you meet the requirements. I do think that having a parking consultant look at this, as I mentioned before, would be helpful for you, but obviously not something we'd require. And to the other points that the board made, I appreciate that you're putting in more childcare, because it's something that's extremely expensive for parents, and much appreciated, so thank you.
And I would be supportive of as well. I know in terms of you all coming back, like at the once operations begin, just to see, just in terms of, I think even like 6 months after operations to begin, just to see how things are operating.
That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Anything further from? Are we prepared to?
Yep.
To vote on it? Okay. All right.
So do we have 7 conditions?
We have a number of conditions, yes. We probably should go over them just before we close the public hearing.
Let's do it. Or, yeah, let's.
And it might be a semi-duplication if we have come back or meet with the town if there's queuing on Liberty Street and come. Yeah.
What's that? Oh,
So just looking at the conditions
sharing.
that we spoke about, we have work with the town if there is queuing on Liberty Street and come back after 4 or 6 months of operation. Are they both
No,
necessary?
I think I have a few other, I have that there's a condition that there'll be no
we have
queuing.
others,
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
but just those two might be a little bit overlapping or
Okay.
duplicative.
So why don't you read off the conditions that we currently have, and we'll
Okay.
see how.
One, the entrance aisle will be widened to 22 feet. 2, confirm with the fire department the circulation is acceptable. 3, employee parking will be designated for the 4 spots on the right and the 11 on the left for the entrance aisle. 4, sidewalk will be extended on the south side of the building in an L shape to the farthest parking spots. 5, the 3 floating staff will be designated to monitoring drop off and pickup. And then 6 was, in the event there is consistent queuing onto Liberty Street, the applicant and developer shall work with the town staff on a resolution. And 7, the applicant will come back to the planning board 4 or 6 months after operations begin for review.
Okay.
I think the one other item was that the exiting lane would be reduced to 18. That's where we're getting the 2
Okay.
feet to add.
Okay.
I would include that in that first one. I
Yep.
just
Right.
said, like, the entrance drive will be widened to 22, and the exit will be decreased to 18.
Okay. And I thought we had there was a condition that there was no queuing on Liberty Street, so it was more of a declarative as opposed to.
Okay.
I think we began with talking about consistent queuing on Liberty Street.
Right.
What I have for that,
Yes.
not to
No, go ahead, Joe.
sorry to keep, something of the nature of queuing onto Liberty Street is prohibited in the event that queuing is taking place. The applicant or property owner shall meet with town staff to find a resolution
Okay.
for this
That-
issue.
Could you restate that again?
Yep.
And just in the mic, just a little.
Yeah. Queuing onto Liberty Street is prohibited in the event that there is a queuing issue at the site, the applicant and/or property owner shall meet with town staff to find a resolution for this issue.
Okay. Jane, did you get that?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's different than the employee thing. The employee, is that the employee thing also? Are we also doing that one also?
Yes, we have it. They agreed to as a condition about having three designated.
Do you think we should just say employees instead of just I think it might be appropriate just to say employees and not maybe a number. I mean, like if one person,
Well, they made the representation that there'd be three employees who would be designated as floating staff who would.
I guess just where I sit from an enforcement side, if
Right.
there's one or two people out, I don't know if, like they should be, if there's one or two people out in the parking lot, if that's, I'm not trying to, just try to function if that matters. If that three is, I know it's important that we want employees out there. I don't know, or do we have a strong feeling that it has to be three? I mean, it's fine if it is. I don't have strong feelings, but.
I said 3 because
right.
we have 3 floaters
Yeah.
who are not designated to a classroom.
Mhm.
So that's fine. You could
What-
put 3 as needed, for example.
So Lou, what would you like to, what are you thinking that we should say there? You think
I think that is, as it was,
Okay,
I
let's
think they
just do-
agreed as to a specific number.
Sure.
I think you could say, 3 floating staff to handle drop-off. Is that?
Okay. Yeah.
I'm
three-
sorry, pickup. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
three,
oh,
so three
drop-off,
employ-
drop-off and pickup.
Oh,
Sure.
both?
Yeah, drop-off and pickup.
Employees will be monitoring and/or managing the parking lot at pickup and drop-off to deter queuing onto Liberty Street, something of that nature?
I think in fairness to the applicant, it should say something about peak time too, because we're not going to expect them to have 3 people out there from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So I think that's only fair for them to determine their peak times. And then I don't know how we
Should-
write that in there, but it seems fair.
I think
Should we say peak times, or do we want to say pickup and drop-off?
well, I mean, pickup and drop-off to me sort of implies
Implies peak
peak
times.
time.
I mean, if they're okay with that.
They're kind of
I just don't want them to
synonyms.
be
What
stuck
do
out there
we,
12 hours.
what would we like to do?
Probably peak drop-off as needed. I think you can put those together so that we know we're going.
pickup and drop-off.
Yeah.
Pick up and drop off, peak times as needed. We're going to know what
Okay.
is necessary.
Three-
If there's nobody coming in, we're not going to have 3 staff people standing in the parking lot. That's silly. But we will have 3 staff that are designated as the parking people.
Okay.
And as needed, they will monitor.
Okay. Got it. So Jean, do we have that?
Yep.
Could you just read that just a sec?
3 employees will be designated to monitor and manage drop-off and pickup during peak times as needed.
Okay. Good.
Did we put in about the signage for employee parking?
Yeah, that's a good point. Did we have as a condition about signage for employee parking?
Yeah, sorry, not to interrupt again. I wrote,
For those 4 spaces and
yes, so
the
the
11.
parking spaces on the left and right of the entrance will be designated for employees only. Employee-only signage shall be added to the plan set for those spaces.
Jean, do you have that there?
Yes.
Just speaking of signage too, there's at your entrance, it says there's a do not enter sign on your plan, so just something we should probably alter. The note on the entrance.
Bob, we can't hear you. You need over the microphone. Sorry.
Okay, just before we get to that,
The do not enter sign at that location is so somebody doesn't exit in the entrance driveway and go out to Liberty Street that way.
oh, so it's facing the other way, okay. Okay, Jean, do you have that?
Employee parking will be designated for the 4 spots on the right and the 11 on the left. For the entrance aisle, employee parking signage will be added.
Okay. Okay. Are we missing anything else? Are we good?
Just that last one about that timing coming back.
Yes.
What do we say for that?
I think they said 4 or 6 months. I think I suggested 6.
Okay.
6 months.
I think we should just pick a time, not like a range. Yeah, I think 6 months seems appropriate.
I think 6. I mean, that
So we'll
seems
say
to
the
gives us
applicant. The applicant is required to come back to the
Yeah, so could we
board
say 6 months from when they commence operations?
6 months after issuance of CO.
Well, not necessarily issuance of a
I was
CO.
Or
was gonna say, I don't want to get super nitpicky,
Yeah.
but if you only have 10 kids enrolled, it kind of doesn't help us, right?
Mhm.
So is there any point in having some sort of percentage of enrollment or something, like 6 months after? I don't know. I don't want to get
Say, like,
super nitpicky.
Let's just say
but-
6 months after opening. I don't know.
I know, but I think his concern is that it's 6 months after opening, and they may have
Oh,
they
not
may still
be
be
full.
under enrolled.
I doubt that's the case, considering the way childcare is around
Okay.
here, but I think it's fine, just do 6 months.
Okay.
So the
6 months.
applicant is required to come back to the planning board 6 months
They're not gonna open.
after
On the list.
After opening.
after opening.
Okay. All right.
That's seven. Is that what we sort of like
Got 7
seven
conditions?
conditions?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm probably have to watch the tape tomorrow, but it'll be fine.
Okay. Do we? Okay. Are you good? Do we need to restate them? Or are we good?
I can if you want.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just so
Okay.
we get it straight.
1, the entrance aisle will be widened to 22
Oh.
feet and the exit will be reduced to 18 feet. 2, confirm with the fire department the circulation is acceptable. 3, employee parking will be designated for the 4 spots on the right and 11 on the left of the entrance aisle, and employee parking signage will be added. 4, sidewalk will be extended on the south side of the building in an L shape to the farthest parking spots. 5, 3 employees will be designated to monitor and manage drop-off and pick-up during peak times as needed. 6, queuing onto Liberty Street is prohibited. In the event there is a queuing issue on site, the applicant and developer shall work with the town staff on a resolution. 7, the applicant is required to come back to the planning board 6 months after opening for a review.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Should we confirm who is getting confirmation from the fire department? Is that town staff or is
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I had it
Can we-
as
Can we have
planning
that
planning
confirmed at
staff.
town staff?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So town staff will confirm. Okay. Good. Okay. Sounds good. I think we have everything covered here.
Move to
Nothing
close
further?
the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tim. All those in favor of motion to close the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, moving back to the main motion. I turn it over to the clerk to make a motion.
Okay. Site plan review, 55 Liberty Street. Date of application, August 13th, 2024. Date of hearing, October 22nd, 2024. Date of decision, October 22nd, 2024. The Danvers Planning Board finds the site plan submitted by 55 Liberty Street LLC for property at 55 Liberty Street, Assessors Map 52, Lot 46, to be in substantial compliance with the criteria and regulations adopted by the town. Details of the plan review can be found on the following plans. Site plan review for daycare facility located at 55 Liberty Street, Danvers, Mass., prepared by Griffin Engineering Group LLC, dated August 13th, 2024, revised to October 11th, 2024, consisting of 12 sheets. Supporting materials include elevations dated November 15th, 2022, stormwater report prepared by Griffin Engineering Group LLC, dated September 12th, 2024, revised to October 11th, 2024, and a parking and traffic memo prepared by Griffin Engineering Group LLC, dated August 13th, 2024. The following submission requirements have been waived. 1. Section 4.3.1, title sheet. The existing dwellings and principal buildings, land use of each lot, and zoning district boundaries are not shown on the plan. Existing contours at 1-foot intervals are shown on the existing conditions plan, C1. 2. Section 4.3.2, Site Analysis Plan. The Site Analysis Plan is entitled The Existing Conditions Plan, C1. Existing contours are shown at 1-foot intervals. 3. Section 4.3.3, Dimensional Regulations Plan. No dimensional regulations plan submitted. The lot line, yard setbacks, height of the building, and zoning dimensional table is shown on the site layout plan, C3. 4. Section 4.3.4, Site Construction Plan. Site Construction Plan is entitled the Site Layout Plan, C3. Existing and proposed contours and proposed drainage are shown on the Grading and Drainage Plan, C4. No table indicating amount of earth material that are to be removed, added, or reused is shown on the plan. 5. Section 4.3.6, Utilities Plan. No utilities plan submitted. The proposed utilities are shown on Site Construction Plan, C2A, C2B. 6. Section 4.3.7 landscape plan. Existing and proposed contours and proposed drainage are shown on the grading and drainage plan, C4. The yard setbacks are shown on site layout plan, C3. A table showing percentage existing and proposed impervious surface is not shown on the plan. 7. Section 4.3.8, off-street parking and loading plan. The off-street parking and loading plan is entitled the site layout plan, C3. The construction details and type of materials is shown on details 3, C 8.02. The following requirements from the zoning bylaw have been waived.
Just not to cut you off, but since we were keeping the 4 parking spaces, that we can skip this section because the waiver is not being requested.
No waiver.
Okay. Conditions of approval. The project is subject to the following conditions. 1. Prior to issuance of a building permit, this site decision shall be recorded at the Southern Essex Registry of Deeds. 2. Prior to endorsement of the site plan, the 4 parallel parking.
Yeah, once again,
Another.
just not to cut you off, but since our conversation,
That one's out.
the 4 parking spaces are going to remain, so not applicable
4
anymore.
parking spaces will remain. Okay. 3. The applicant will satisfy all of the comments in the Danvers Engineering Division memorandum dated October 16th, 2024. 4. If there are any changes to the approved plans, the use, or the conditions on premises, the planning staff will review. If deemed a major change by staff, the applicant will have to apply for a new application for site plan review.
And then I would just say, like, the 7 conditions that we've
Okay.
repeated a couple we don't have to, I don't know if we have to say them again, but just mention.
I'll say them again.
Okay.
Okay. The following are 7 conditions. 1. The entrance aisle will be widened to 22 feet and the exit will be reduced to 18 feet. 2. Town staff will confirm with the fire department the circulation is acceptable. 3. Employee parking will be designated for the 4 spots on the right and the 11 spots on the left of the entrance aisle. And employee parking signage will be added. 4. Sidewalk will be extended on the south side of the building in an L shape to the farthest parking spots. 5. 3 employees will be designated to monitor and manage drop-off and pick-up during peak times as needed. 6. Queuing onto Liberty Street is prohibited. In the event there is a queuing issue on site, the applicant and developer shall work with town staff on a resolution. 7. The applicant is required to come back to the planning board 6 months after opening for a review.
I think you have to add also, this project is subject to the general conditions.
That was hidden. This project is subject to the attached list of general conditions. Any approval of the site plan review shall lapse within 3 years from the grant thereof if construction has not begun by such date.
Okay, a motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tim. All in favor? Please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. It's been approved. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks for my board members and members of the public for their comments as well, and thank you for,
Thank you for your help, I appreciate it.
absolutely.
Thank you.
It's good we were able to work through these concerns. Thank you. Okay. Okay, let's move on to our next agenda item. Okay. Next agenda item is a public hearing with respect to the subdivision rules and regulations. Adoption of new planning board rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in Danvers, Massachusetts. And so, and I'll ask town staff to give an introduction here, but I think this is the first of what will be at least several public hearings with respect to the subdivision rules and regulations. Tonight is just the sort of the opening sort of intro to this, and I think then we'll be planning some subsequent meetings, include I think what I'd recommend even like a standalone a standalone meeting, sort of a working meeting to go over these. But
That's right. I gave a pretty brief or
yeah, if you want to give a brief
Yeah.
opening, sure.
So currently our subdivision rules and regulations are from 1979. So we thought that it might be beneficial or time to update this document that would be for the creation of new roads in town and the associated lots. We've put a draft together, planning staff, and we have been working with the engineering staff also for the past couple months, having like work group meetings, just, for an hour or two, just going kind of line by line, sentence by sentence, like, do you have any comments or, so the draft that's in front of, basically some of the big things that we're just trying to, update. There's new roadway layouts, new, kind of, the widths of roads and just how, they've changed a lot since the 70s. One of the other big things that we're trying to incorporate is kind of stronger stormwater regulations and low impact development features, best management practices. So yes, I didn't think that tonight, we had talked what would be the best way, the chair and staff, like what would be the best way to do this. Probably be difficult to go like line by line or section by section. So basically, we're not modifying or amending the 1970 rules and regs. We're completely just starting from, we're just starting anew. So we're not amending that document.
So I noticed we didn't see a red line or anything of that
No,
nature.
I did it earlier today. I did throw in the original. I was like, oh, that might be beneficial for just everyone to know. Like that's what it looks like today.
I do see them, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to make an interesting note that it was, I think the original was adopted in September of 1979.
Right.
So signed on by John George,
Right. There you go.
who was the chairman at the time.
So,
Interesting.
so yes, I think we're a staff's view. I think because there is a decent, it's like 60 pages.
Yeah.
That it probably would be beneficial to kind of have a standalone, like the chair and I, the staff discussed potentially having like a standalone that we would just kind of talk about that. But I'm not sure if there's any kind of like preliminary questions or comments. I'm not sure if everyone's had a chance to look through it. Obviously, there's a decent amount of it that just kind of talks about process, right? And how many days when the application's submitted, and then the paper requirements and the plan requirements, and it's all like the nitty gritty. For like approval A&Rs, preliminary subdivision plans, and then definitive subdivision plans. But obviously between now and the next couple of weeks, if people have questions or comments about them, if you'd like to send us your red line version, or if we want, we just sent you a PDF, we could send you a Word version. But it is a public hearing. So yeah, I guess I'd open up to the board. And then I could.
I think in terms of, I'm interested in sort of, and I know typically when we've done some of these major changes, we've had a either a presentation or executive summary in terms of that. So in terms of, I know we don't have that presently, and this is just the intro sort of discussion of it.
Right.
Are we, do we have a, sort of a summary of sort of some of the top changes to the?
Yeah, I would say, like I said, so the stormwater piece is going to be a big one. Those last three sections, like 6, 7, and 8, that are definitely going to be very engineering, technical heavy. That are the design piece, the stormwater piece, and I would say this is probably the most. One of the things that we're contemplating or proposing is the prohibition of cul-de-sacs. Would probably,
I think it's referred to as no dead-end streets.
Yeah,
is that?
sure. Right. So that would be, from a policy standpoint, that's, as staff, we're proposing that at this time, but that's probably one of the more bigger, if not the biggest policy change in the document.
And that's based upon?
That's based upon just kind of best practices in terms of just from an emergency services standpoint, just ambulances and fire trucks, kind of like we were talking about earlier tonight. That's kind of talking about the advantage of not allowing them anymore is just connectivity within the community and, having streets connect. And then third is just from a utility standpoint, having water lines not ending but having them be connected and not having to do lots of loops and dead ends on water lines and just utilities in general. So we can, discuss. Tonight was just sort of like a very start, but we can get into it, with people's questions, concerns, and
Okay.
that sort of thing.
So in terms of the timeline we're looking at this, this is in advance of February special town meeting?
So
What is-
okay, so information. So it actually is not a town meeting item.
Okay.
It's actually just needs to be voted by the planning board.
Got it.
So it just happened to be. We just thought that we started the process and we thought it might be a good time, up until prior to leading up to it.
Sure.
Just up to. It should have obviously probably been done previously, but now we're getting to it now. So.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So, I think we can approach it. I'd like to hear what our colleagues have to feel about it. We can approach it different ways. I think I think having like a standalone meeting to where this is what we walk through, so we're not not having to have it sort of maybe rushed at the end of a otherwise full agenda.
Right.
And so it would mean like an additional meeting that's like I'm not even sure. I know when you and I spoke, maybe even potentially looking at maybe the during an off meeting time, even like something like even potentially like next week, like the 29th.
Right. So as we speak right now, the next regularly scheduled meeting that we would continue this item probably to is November 12th. You and we had discussed potentially, right? Potentially, if it was the will of the board and
Sure.
people were interested and available, potentially meeting next week. Potentially, like we had thrown out, potentially knowing everyone's availability, like next Tuesday, potentially at like 7. And then we would just simply talk about this document.
It would be a continuation of the
A
public hearing, so it's a
continuation of this public hearing.
public hearing,
Yep.
but it would just be focused on that.
It would just be a regular meeting, but that would be the only item on the agenda.
Okay.
And obviously, it's a public hearing, so the public can attend. It would be recorded, and
Sure.
it would just be like a regular meeting.
Okay.
Don't you have to give notice of that in advance of 1 week?
What's that?
Do you have to give more than 1 week's notice on that for the public?
Well, this is a public hearing, so we did that for tonight. We already did that for tonight.
Right,
You
but
did
for a
it for
subsequent
next week?
meeting.
What's that? I'm sorry.
No, if we were to today schedule a meeting for next Tuesday.
Oh yeah, we would just need 48 hours to post the agenda
Yeah,
because we started like
Yeah.
I did the notice for tonight. So it would just be like, just if we continued it to November 12th. It's the same. It's
No,
the
but
same.
if you were trying to schedule a meeting for next Tuesday,
Yeah.
do we have enough notice for a public meeting, even though it's a kind of an internal meeting?
Yeah.
I thought you had to
yeah,
have-
we would just need 48 hours.
I thought you had to publish it in the,
Well, I did.
Thursday
I posted this here. I posted this tonight in the newspaper and everything.
I'm talking about next week's meeting.
But we wouldn't, once something started, once a hearing started, like we're starting it tonight, we don't
You don't have to post the
notify every
continuation?
single, we don't
Okay.
notify again.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm
I mean,
saying?
do we have a lot on the agenda in the upcoming, do we foresee a lot on the agenda? I mean, personally, I'm very busy at the end of month, so it would be hard for me to come next week.
Sure.
And I'm going to be going away the end of that week, so I would prefer
That's
to
fine.
do it if
No.
we could on our regularly scheduled meetings.
That's-
If we dedicate,
It was just a
say,
conversation that we were,
even if we came in
yeah,
half hour or hour before and we said, okay, we're going to handle
yeah, we could,
section 1
Yeah,
through
right. We
3
could do that.
on
We've
this
done that.
night and so on. I mean, just
Sure.
personally, I think instead of coming an extra, unless we have that full of an agenda, I don't think
not
we
like-
do.
no,
but-
it's not what I would say full, the
So
12th.
how many items do we have on the 12th?
Just two,
Yeah.
just two.
So
And-
personally, I would prefer to do it on our regular scheduled
Okay.
nights, especially now getting into
Right.
holidays, November and December. That's my feeling.
Okay.
Sure.
Tim, what do you think? In terms of scheduling this out and
Yeah, I mean,
Voting
just
time.
sticking with our regular meetings seems like it makes sense. Maybe one side question I have is, so I understand the two documents you uploaded. There's the 1979 one, and there's a new one. So we should be reviewing the new one.
Yeah, don't even look. I just provided that to the group
Just for fun.
for context.
Historical context.
Historical
Pleasure
context,
reading. Got it.
no, I would not review that one unless you want to.
And is the new one sort of final? There's no
What do you mean by?
final 4-hour review. Is this a draft? Did we get dig into
It's
this
a
one?
moving draft.
And how is it drafted?
How is it
What was the process for getting to where we are now?
to where we are?
Yep.
Like we, as the planning staff, kind of put a draft together. It was been a couple year process actually. It was something that we've been working on for a couple years, and then we recently, in the past couple months, brought engineering into the fold to like help us with like the real technical, like, what's the depth of the road? How wide do we want it? What is the pipes, the size, and the type, and all the technically stuff. Is that what you mean? Like,
Yeah, I just meant like, is it based off of another town? Is
No,
it
I
a
wouldn't-
reorganization of the old material? I was just curious. For
Yeah.
the level of-
I wouldn't say another town. I think it's kind of been like a moving over the past like 3 or 4 years. Just a draft that just keeps being worked on.
Okay.
And I guess.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm not articulating that well, but
Okay. Got it. Okay. Gene, what do you think of in terms of timing and sort of logistics and the like?
I'm personally free next Tuesday, but if people want to continue it till the 12th, I'm fine with that also.
Mike?
The 12th is fine. I know we talked about coming in earlier, and I just have to check with my wife.
Okay.
would you coming earlier? Would that be difficult for you? Is that what you're saying?
Potentially.
Yep.
I just have to look at my schedule. 'Cause
Yeah,
I'm just
yep.
not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would be, of course, I want to be respectful of people's time, and so that's, I want to, but at the same time, I want to make sure that this does get proper attention, and so, I mean, I'm fine with having it go into a regularly scheduled meeting, but I do want to be, I think, carving out some additional time, like maybe at the front end of the meeting, like we've done before when we've had other sort of, where we started a little bit early, and also maybe to the extent we can have, if we can also maybe even have again, I don't want to be making more work for staff, but even some sort of like an executive summary type presentation that
Sure.
can,
Yeah.
in terms of the changes. Does that make?
Yeah, they're not really changes, but yeah, like because it is like it's just completely new. But yes, we could highlight.
Just to focus the discussion. I guess that's the,
sure.
I
I think that where you folks sit, you probably aren't as. I mean, maybe just me talking. You're probably not as concerned with how many copies of the plans that they need, but more the stuff that I think you folks would care about.
Mhm.
So we could do that.
Yeah. Now, in terms of, I know you mentioned also you offered sort of like to do to send a Word document for it. Is that something?
Yeah. Yeah, we could do that.
Like, is that something that if we have a Word document, we can focus any questions to staff, not amongst each other, but just to staff?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we could obviously send out a Word doc that you tear apart and add comments and say, what does this mean? Unclear, this sentence is horrible, whatever, all that. Yep, we could do that.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so it looks like we have at least a general consensus that we'll have this discussed at our next meeting.
And then maybe
November 12th.
we could potentially do 6:30. Potentially, Mike would be a question mark, but
Probably fine.
something
Half an hour
like.
is probably fine, yeah.
You think that it would be better, I guess, to start with this or end with this item?
I would say probably. I mean, I would like a sufficient amount of time to discuss this. So I would.
What
think
if we back
could-
up a napkin, started at 6:30 on the 12th, and we at least minimum talked about it for an hour, and then we jumped into the regularly scheduled stuff at 7:30 or something?
So we devote at least an hour.
How does that sound to the group?
Does that sound
That's fine.
good? Okay.
Okay.
And again, if you can also, in terms of in terms of, like a brief presentation, sort of at the outset, just,
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't have to be extensive, but just
Yeah.
to kind of walk through sort of the,
Yeah.
sort of the contents of this, and then, and of course, and prior to the, soon, like in the next, couple of days, if you can send us a Word document as well, so we can
Yep. I'm
send
here.
any questions to you all.
I'm hearing you.
Okay. So, all right.
Yeah, I think the dead-end streets really jumps out at me. I mean, I don't know where that came from. And I just know almost every subdivision we've approved in the last several years I've been on the board has been a dead end.
Right.
Or cul-de-sac. There's very, very few connecting ones, and what's the motivation behind that? And being on the board for a long time and being on these other committees, studying, land use in town and what we actually have left for developable land, which is very small. I mean, if we want to develop it and we want it to, benefit the tax rolls or the townspeople, why would we put this in? I mean, there's very little land left
Sure.
to develop. I'm just curious as to where this came from, and
Sure.
do other towns do it? Because, I mean, if you look at
Yeah, they definitely do.
the
for-
last areas in town that we've developed, from
Right.
Chatham Lane to, Choate Farm to, any of these, Ashley Lane, the one off Locust Street, the two on Locust Street over there that we did. Everything's a dead end. Everything's a cul-de-sac.
Right.
And I think those are good subdivisions. I think those have provided good housing, for people in town. And why would we shy away with that? To make it connect is going to require that much more land to do that, and maybe limit the ability. I'd really have to hear the motivation for that.
Yep.
Because I think as part of it, can we have that land use study to tell us, okay, in Danvers, we've got about, 5 acres at the Nike site. If the Army ever gives that up, that could be developed. We've got land, over here that if that's ever developed, I don't think there's very much land left.
There's not, but you'd be surprised though. There's some interesting. There's some folks up there for a living that's what they do, right? They
Yeah.
trying to find those spots, right? I mean, I don't think we're gonna get. I think the Woodville type situations is probably not happening in our lifetime.
But a 6-lot subdivision.
But, I mean-
how is that a
I think that
bad cul-de-sac?
that's just that's just something that we're proposing. I think we're open to obviously the conversation. So
Yeah, but that, I think that's going to be that's going to be a significant piece.
Yeah, for sure.
That's definitely a significant change.
yeah, it's
and
probably
so
it's going to be the the
in
most
terms of town
discussed
staff
item.
presenting on it, is that something?
What's that?
Now, in terms of town staff,
Yeah.
is that I know obviously you'll be there presenting on behalf of town staff.
Yeah.
Are there any other members of town staff who should is Brian been?
Brian might come, but I need to confirm with him if he would attend, or there's potential that he would attend, but I don't know for sure at this moment. But I can.
But just on that one point, and I don't want to belabor it, because I just think that what gives the 5 of us the right to decide that development issue for the town for the next 50 years? I think that should be decided by a broader vote by the townspeople. It just seems
Sure.
odd to me, and not because I represent builders and developers. It just seems odd that we can make that a rule, and that rule is the rule of the land for the town. No more subdivisions. It just seems
No, it's not no more subdivisions, just the prohibition of
dead ends.
dead ends.
But I think if you inventory the last several applications in front of this board, they were all dead ends. They were all
Yeah.
cul-de-sacs.
That doesn't.
I don't think I've seen a connecting one, even the one we did at, Vista Drive into.
Overlook
They
and-
wanted to connect that, but that didn't work. And that's a 30, 40, almost 50 lot subdivision. And that's a dead end.
Sure.
So I'm
Yep.
I'm
I figured that-
struggling to remember any ones that connected.
I'm sure that will be
So.
a talking point for sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So, all right, so why don't we then plan on, so we'll plan on continuing this to the 12th, and if you can send us a Word document, I encourage all of my fellow board members to address any, questions or comments to staff, and so that way at least they'll be prepared to answer questions you have. Obviously, you've gotten some thoughts already, so in terms of some of the changes.
For sure.
So that will continue.
I think I will maybe potentially do the 6:30 p.m. If possible, but just to make sure that we'd at least have an hour to talk about it.
No, I think that'll.
Yeah.
If we can do a 6:30,
Yeah.
hopefully Mike can make it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That'd be great.
I wouldn't ask anything earlier.
Okay. So let's then. Okay.
So we'll need an official motion to continue it to that.
Okay. So let's see here. Let's see. I assume at this point we don't have any public comment. Okay. Very good. All right. I'd entertain a motion to continue the public hearing on the subdivision rules and regulations to the next planning board meeting date of November 12th at 6:30 p.m.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. The motion's been moved and seconded to continue the public hearing. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, so that's continued to November 12th. So I think that's all we have with respect to the agenda. Josh, what's our next meeting is the 12th November because of Election Day in 2 weeks?
Oh, yep. I was wondering why we jumped.
Yeah, that's why we jumped, yeah.
No, that's
So-
the first,
That's
that's the
a
second
regular.
Tuesday
that's the
anyway.
second
Yeah, it's-
Tuesday anyway.
12th is the second
Oh,
Tuesday, the
got
5th is
it.
the
Yeah.
first Tuesday.
It's-
Yeah.
So that meeting will be here for that reason.
Okay, Senior Center. Mhm.
Senior Center. So we'll have the item that we just continued. So we'll likely start the meeting at least for an hour to talk about subdivision rules and regs. The two other items are, there's an application for a special permit for the outdoor sale of automobiles at 24 Newberry, which was that former like patio store on Route 1 South.
Oh, yes.
Sunline.
Sunline, yep,
yeah.
at that site.
Okay.
So that's one of the applications. And then there's an application related to, the request is a partial release of a covenant related to the subdivision of Trask Lane, this covenant from 1972.
Okay.
We'll hopefully be providing you more information on that item because it's not something that we talk about.
Okay.
It's not a regular type of application, so
Okay.
we'll hopefully be providing you more information on that over the next couple weeks before the meeting. So
Okay. Anything else then? Any other?
just those three items.
Okay. Got it.
Can I ask a question of staff?
Yes, sir.
I heard through, well, that the Fidelity Building, which is going along like gangbusters, are they still going to build the hotel in the back? I'm hearing that they may not be doing that, and then they would have to come in front of us, correct, for a modification?
The last I've heard, not to get into the last I've heard is that we had a meeting with them Monday, and they are pursuing a hotel.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that between when it was so we approved that in January. So I think there was some time where that was from the development team's question mark that was what was going to happen there, but I believe that is
Back
What-
on track?
back on track.
Okay.
Great.
There you go. Anything
Thank you.
else? Entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
First by Jim, second by Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.